Welcome to the MMA Outsider Show. I am Josh Gross, joined by Jeff Sherwood on this warm Saturday night in August. Jeff, August 15th, 2020, third straight summer in a row. We've watched Stipe Miocic fight Daniel Cormier. Two for Stipe, one for DC. That's the end of the rubber match. Stipe Miocic wins a decision tonight. First fight that goes the distance. Jeff, how are we feeling about the fight tonight? Did it live up to your expectations?
Oh yeah, I mean it was a very good fight. Man, some of those rounds were so close. You really had no idea. Well, you know, with the judges, you really have no idea as it is. But these were actually close rounds. I had it going into the fifth 2-2. I thought Daniel Cormier won that fourth round. I saw some people saying that they thought Stipe won it. I thought Daniel Cormier won that round with one eye. I mean, you can't really complain because DC did poke Stipe first, but I feel that Stipe poking DC looked much worse on the replay. I mean, it was a bad one.
Bad, weren't they? They were both pretty bad.
But you saw the damage in DC's eye like immediately.
All the way in there. All the way in there, right? There was definitely eye pokes. Not the first time in this trilogy we've talked about eye pokes and the effect that they have. It's kind of just a fact of life in mixed martial arts at this point, Jeff. It is what it is, as they like to say. The bottom line is after 15 rounds, or at least 15 scheduled rounds, we can now say that Stipe Miocic is the better heavyweight than Daniel Cormier, and that's quite a statement. A lot of the talk coming in was how great will the winner be, right? The greatest of all time, the greatest in the UFC history, the greatest heavyweight of all time. I don't know how to answer that question except to say that I think that you can put Stipe Miocic into a fight against any human being who ever walked the face of the earth, and he'd have a really good chance of winning. And that's something that you can point to and feel like as we watched it has a lot of meaning. I'll say this fight to me was one of the first where I missed a crowd. I missed a crowd in this fight. Mm-hmm. I think the fighters missed a crowd. You know, it's just such a huge thing, a heavyweight championship fight in the UFC. And to not have that crowd energy, to me, it actually made a difference. Did you sense that at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of moments in these past UFCs that you think that in the back of your mind, like, man, it would be so different with a crowd there. But with all sporting events we're watching right now. But yeah, a heavyweight fight, man, you know, this is something that is always big. It doesn't matter who's fighting, but if it's a big heavyweight fight, especially a championship, that's what people want to see, no matter who it is. As long as it's a championship heavyweight fight, people want to watch it.
It felt like, and I don't know how much you're paying attention to it, but it did feel like the sports world was paying attention to this fight. And they've been doing that now for a while. I mean, I think the mainstream sports world has kind of coalesced around the UFC, and for big fights, you get stars chiming in. Now we have LeBron James chiming in and the whole kind of thing. It felt like, again, Stipe Miocic is a guy who should probably get more attention than he does. He probably should be more popular than he is. He is the greatest UFC heavyweight in history at a time when the sport's never been bigger for the UFC. There's never been more exposure in the UFC, those ties with ESPN. But it doesn't feel that way to me, Jeff. How does it feel to you in terms of Stipe Miocic's presence, not only in the UFC, but in mixed martial arts and in mainstream sports?
It's horrible. The UFC has done a horrible job with Stipe. Stipe should be one of the most popular fighters in mixed martial arts. He's a firefighter. Everyone loves firefighters. The other pro athletes that are from Cleveland have promoted Stipe a million times better than the UFC. The UFC only promotes Dana White. Maybe they'll pull their head out of their ass now and actually step up and start promoting Stipe. I mean, when you think about it, who does the UFC promote? I mean, yeah, they're running things when they have fights coming up. I mean, you know, we saw Adesanya, you know, flashes and things like that. But they're doing that to promote the pay-per-view, not to promote him. They didn't even promote Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor did all these crazy things himself. He promoted himself by doing stupid things, and it didn't come down to the UFC at all. And the UFC has always had problems promoting. I don't know why. They promote the UFC incredibly, and just specific fighters that they should promote, they just don't do it. It boggles my mind. I have no idea why.
It's an interesting thing because you can't kind of have one without the other. There's no question that the UFC is not going to go about really investing a lot of time and energy into a fighter until they show that they can pay off, or it seems like they have all the attributes of that. And even still, it takes something else, right? It takes the fighter not only be like a willing participant, but then having the intangibles, right? A guy like DC, you look at him and you wouldn't think that like he became a star presence, right? But he's got that personality. People love Daniel Cormier. People do not love Stipe Miocic, and that's not because of anything that he's done or anything to bring disrepute to the sport or himself. It's just he's pretty much a reserved guy. He's going to let you know he loves Cleveland and he loves sports. But other than that, I mean, you talked about the firefighter, and that's great. And he's an everyman, and that he's just being himself. And it's awesome to have a heavyweight champion of the UFC that's like that. But that doesn't guarantee, Jeff, that audiences are going to take to him. And outside of Cleveland, I mean, I'm not sure that the mixed martial arts world really embraces Stipe Miocic because he doesn't let us in so much, right? I think that you have to have fighters who let us into that world, either the make-believe world, something they can conjure in terms of persona, or who they are genuinely. And I've never gotten that from Stipe. He's kind of kept everything at arm's length. You don't feel that he has some responsibility in the way that he's perceived or the way that the UFC can sell him?
To a point. I think the first time he got knocked out by DC kind of hurt him a little bit for that, because Chuck never did those things. And Chuck turned into a massive star. The only thing that Chuck did was have the mohawk and the tattoo on the back of his head and knocked people out and wore the flame shorts. But other than that, Chuck never really went out there and did all the shit that people do these days to get, say stupid things. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Stipe. You interview him, and it's never a great interview. It's always just kind of like, I'm happy to be here. I knock people out, and that's it. And Chuck was a huge star.
Yeah, Chuck was. You have to have that winning piece, right? And I guess there's not been a better winner in the heavyweight division of the UFC than Stipe Miocic. We talked about it last show, kind of the conversation around who's the greatest. Fedor's a guy that's got to be in that conversation. Stipe Miocic has to be in that conversation. Who else has to be in that conversation, Jeff? Anybody?
I mean, not counting all the UFCs. I mean, if we're just counting the MMA as a whole, I mean, I would put Nogueira in that conversation.
Fedor's clearly ahead of Nogueira, though, right?
Obviously.
So
I mean, those two guys.
Yeah.
And DC even, but now obviously he falls down some. But in my eyes, if you're going to talk about the greatest MMA heavyweight, it has to be Stipe or Fedor.
Yeah, I don't like Randy Couture had too many losses, but there were moments in his heavyweight tenure where he was that guy too.
Yeah.
And, we were robbed of that Couture-Fedor fight. We never got it. That would have answered a lot of questions about who that best heavyweight was. It would have, in some ways, brought two lines together, the UFC and the Pride line. Although Fedor went UFC like champion seeking, he hunted out a lot of those guys and beat a lot of them. But at a certain point that diverged, right? We got Couture into Lesnar, into the whole thing where we have now. I certainly think that there's something to be said for a great dominant heavyweight champion. What would you like to see next for Stipe Miocic? Is it Francis Ngannou? Is that the obvious? That's the obvious fight, right?
Yeah. I think it's Francis.
Right.
Even though Rosenstruck had a good fight tonight, but I mean, he got knocked out by Ngannou, so it's got to be Stipe and Francis. It's got to be.
What about John Jones? Because that's kind of the wild card here. If John Jones steps in and says, you know what, I beat DC twice, Stipe beat DC twice. Now he lost to him. I want to move up to heavyweight. I want that challenge. Does that immediately vault past the Ngannou fight? I think it has to, right? It has to. Or do you want to see Jones take a heavyweight fight that's not for the title?
I would like to see that, but that's not necessarily the best decision business-wise. If I'm the UFC running a business and Jones wants to do that fight, I do that fight.
You do that fight. I think if you're Stipe Miocic, you do that fight too. You want that fight. Francis Ngannou is, I mean, it's just terrifying. And the way that Miocic beat him the first time, it seems really hard that he's going to beat him the second way, like second time that way as well. So if you have that Jones, that's a massive fight, a massive payday. Really, if you're the greatest heavyweight champion in history, you want to fight the greatest light heavyweight champion in UFC history. That would be, I think, a dream for the UFC and for everyone else. And then the guy that is sort of in the afterthought now is DC, Jeff. He talked about after the fight that he thinks he's retired for good now. He told Joe Rogan that. He talked about that there's really nothing left. He wants to fight for championship fights, and he doesn't think that that's in his future. He also talked about the left eye damage from the eye poke. He said he couldn't see it all. So Daniel Cormier done? Is he retired officially as far as you're concerned?
I think so. I think so. I mean, he has a place to go, right? He's great in the booth. He's great at calling fights. There's no reason to keep fighting for him. I mean, it's not going to get any better than it has been for him. So I think this is a perfect time. I know it probably really sucks and stings a little bit to walk away with a loss, but he did great things while he was in there. So it's time. I think it's best for him and his family. And I don't ever wish anyone to retire. And I'm never that guy that says, oh, that guy needs to retire. I never say that. I don't think if anybody still wants to do what they love to do, who am I to say they should retire, So, but I think from an outsider looking in at this point for DC and his family, and he's got someplace to go, why not just walk away?
Yeah, it's very hard hill to climb now. ESPN, I think, put up this stat during the broadcast that Randy Couture is the only heavyweight who's been older than 40 to win that title. So, it's and a few have tried now. I believe DC when he says he's done. He's got too much to look forward to, too much to do, too many things that can occupy his time, can make him feel competitive still. He does the high school wrestling and all these other things. He works in AKA. He's still going to be a very important presence in mixed martial arts. When I visited him up in San Jose last year before he beat Stipe, we talked a lot. I spent a lot of time with DC, about 2.5 days, and visited him in his house and was with him at the high school in Gilroy right after that shooting. And, we talked a lot about what it would mean to walk away and when he knew it was the right time to walk away. And I think for him, it does boil down to that competitiveness. And if he's not there anymore and he can't do it, it's time to walk away. This is not a guy I think that has to fight anymore for paydays, make a living doing it. So for me, that's been DC's sort of calling card over the entire course of his career, right? Is that here's a hardcore competitor. He's a guy that Scott Coker didn't even look at. He's like, that guy can fight like that, yeah, that guy could fight, and it turned out to be that way. And I think it's his drive, his desire to be great, the ability to make himself great, not only through discipline, but recognizing where he has deficits and he has to improve and how he can do that. And then just putting himself out there. And he did it. He did that for a long time. I think people should think fondly of Daniel Cormier as he exits mixed martial arts. No question about it. That fight with Stipe, if that's it for him, I mean, you can't really criticize him or say anything negative of him. You have a DC memory, Jeff, before we move on to the rest of the card?
The biggest memory I have of DC has nothing to do with MMA. That was when we were golfing at the Strike Force celebrity golf tournament or whatever they called it. And DC golfed with me and Jordan from Bakersfield and Greg Savage. And Daniel Cormier is the worst golfer that I've ever seen. And the story of him almost killing a guy after he told him to move, and the guy's like, no, and he hit the cart. Everybody that's listened to the Sherdog Radio Network over the years has heard it. And this guy's name was Josiah or something. And this was a little guy. And after DC almost killed him with a golf ball, Josiah got out of the golf cart like he was going to beat DC's ass. And the funniest thing was DC just looked at him because all of Josiah's friends were saying, Josiah, get back in the cart. And DC just laughed and said, Josiah, get back in the cart.
Go back, Josiah. Josiah, it's not your day, my friend. That's hilarious. Yeah, DC. Not the golfer, but he was a hell of a combat sports athlete. I think Rogan during the broadcast said he was the best wrestler that the UFC had ever seen. I disagree with that. Certainly a great wrestler, high-level wrestler, but I mean, you can't say that. You've had Olympic medalists in the UFC competing who turned out to be amazing mixed martial artists like
Henry Cejudo's pretty good.
Right. He's one of the few that jumped out to you.
And a person that we never even really got to see take off was Kevin Jackson, right? Another great wrestler.
Yeah, Kevin Jackson got caught in the armbar by Frank Shamrock, and that didn't quite work out for him. So the main event of UFC 252 is what most people is going to be discussing. There was, of course, a full fight card. The main card on pay-per-view was really sort of the focus, and it was the fight you said that you were looking forward to perhaps most on the card. I saw some people saying really that was the number one fight that they were angling on was Sugar Sean O'Malley, against Marlon Vera. This fight did not go the way that people thought it was going to go, and it's a result that people are not going to give Marlon Vera much credit for. But nonetheless, it's a pause on the hype train for Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Another one. Another pause.
And that's okay. He's still young and got a ton of talent, very interesting guy. But what does this say now about prospect building in the UFC? I missed it, but everything on social media was talking about how ESPN and Stephen A. Smith did a piece on Sean O'Malley before the fight and comparing him to Michael Westbrook. Not Michael Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, sorry. And and Luka Doncic and like these like star NBA players of that caliber. You know, we get to this hype train. He's the new Irish Muhammad Ali, I guess, right? Because we had one of those, but he's kind of Irish, but that's who he is. I think UFC identifies talent, and usually they don't star build, but once in a while they try. And almost every time that they try, remember, it never quite works. Never quite works. Yeah, we'll see. What do you take away from this fight?
Well, first of all, I don't listen to anything Stephen A. Smith says about any sport because he drives me crazy. But you know, this was a tough fight. I knew that Cheeto was going to be very tough for O'Malley, and I went back and forth on the co-main event as I did the main event, and I kind of talked myself out of Cheeto because I felt. I sometimes when I'm picking fights, not that it even matters who I pick because who the hell am I? And, you know, don't ever listen to me, even though I say otherwise. My original thought was to pick Cheeto, but then I thought maybe I was picking with my heart. His story, everything. I mean, if you listen to, you know, the story with this kid and everything, he kind of pulls you in, right? Like you said. You know, he's a fighter that has led us in to his life story, and he pulled us in. And I thought, plus, you know, I'm good friends with Colin Oyama, and I was sitting there thinking, I'm picking with my heart and not with my head. And I changed my pick this morning to O'Malley, and then afterwards I was like, you know. But I mean, that who knows what happened? That was kind of a freak accident. If that doesn't happen, who knows how the fight plays out, right?
But that's how it goes down sometimes. I'm not. That's the thing. It's like people are not going to credit Marlon Vera, and they're not going to feel like the hype train's totally derailed. And all of that's fair. I mean, all of that's fair, I think. So a pause on the hype train for Sean O'Malley, and then Chio Vera's 6th win in a row. That's a big deal at 135. He's right there. And yeah, like you said, Colin Oyama just keeps on trucking very quietly. No one talks about Colin Oyama. He doesn't talk to anybody. He just keeps on training fighters, and they do well. So another one for man from
he is one guy that whenever he comes into town, I make time to go to dinner with him, and we talk, and we just sit and talk about old times, and we talk about old fights and things like that. And I enjoy his company. And he's a tell it like it is guy. I always liked his coaching style,
Yeah.
And you'd never hear him say one word about himself.
No.
And I like that. And he's
Yeah.
never sought out the media like, hey, come to my gym. Hey, come and see my fighters.
No.
Oyama, you're never going to get that from. And I always liked him for that. But, I to be honest, once I saw Sean O'Malley's hair at the weigh-ins, I kind of wanted him to lose.
Did you? The hair didn't do it for you?
No. But I mean,
that he had hair or that it was colored? Which one?
Funny, you're the second one that's used that joke on me. But
it's so obvious. Obviously, it's like
I don't know. It's just I watch a lot of things about O'Malley, and it's kind of on the verge of kind of some of the crazy things that we see Henry Cejudo do, that he does things and you just shake your head and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And O'Malley's like right at that line. And I have a feeling if he wins a couple more fights, he's going to step over that line because he's going to have a little more confidence and power. And, everyone likes different things from different people. And that's just one thing. I never liked Henry Cejudo's dumb videos that he does or whatever. And I just thought, wow, why are you doing this? But it is what it is, like you said earlier.
Yeah, attention seeking. It worked for Henry, and we'll see with Sean. We'll see how it pans out in the end. Wasn't the co-main event, but a lot of people are looking forward to this heavyweight fight between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Junior Dos Santos. It did not go well for the Brazilian. Rozenstruik rebounds after that 20-second loss to Francis Ngannou last time out, and here he is back in the mix in the heavyweight division. What are we thinking for Biggie Boy? I put the graphic up here. Do you want to see him fight Curtis Blades? Do you want to see him fight Derek Lewis? To me, those are the two most obvious potential opponents. The timeline works. Is that a yes? And then of the two of them, which one makes more sense to you?
I would like to see him fight Blades. But I never give Lewis as much credit as he probably should get for some reason, just because I never know if he's coming into a fight healthy, in shape, mentally focused, and ready to go. And that's just me. That's something I do, and I probably shouldn't do that. But you always worry if his back's going to be hurt, because it seems like the build up to a fight, a big fight, a heavyweight fight, like if a fighter comes in with a bad back or injured or something, it's just such a letdown, right? So there's always that question mark for me with Lewis. So I like the Blades fight for sure.
I think you can't go wrong there. I think either way the UFC wins. Blades is a stylistically more difficult fight, I think, for Rozenstruik. If you're looking for fireworks, Rozenstruik Lewis, we maybe pays off in the way that the Ngannou fights didn't for Lewis. Right. But you get a feeling about the potential of that, and then the winner there could be next in line. I think the heavyweight division has to sort of shake itself out, but this was a good win for him. Big deal to right the ship, and for Junior Dos Santos now is it's taking a step back in that division. He was atop the division for a while, right there, 1A with Cain Velasquez. But that's a while ago. We're talking about quite a few years ago at this point. So the new generation comes along and they show themselves, and here we are. Rest of the main card, Jeff, we got the ticker rolling the whole time. The pay-per-view started with Merab against John Dodson, unanimous decision. This was not a fight that I think people might have expected in terms of the way it played out, because Dashvili's been so incredible on takedowns. Although John Dodson's difficult to take down, even probably harder to hold down. It was a situation where time after time after time, Dashvili went to his strength but didn't press. Didn't really push the issue. He mixed it up, relied on striking when he had it. And I thought this was a good quality win for a night when he knew that his strength, the thing that he's been dominating people on, just wasn't going to be the difference. He found a way to do it. What'd you think of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to fight John Dodson, right? I mean, if you're going to put him on his back, you got to catch him first, and that's extremely hard. And it showed in this fight. And, it looked to me like he did what he had to do to win. And I don't have any issues with that. I've never had issues with that in mixed martial arts. I know a lot of people have. A lot of people look down at wrestlers and grapplers and, you know, things like that. But if that's your strength, why would you go against it? Use your strength. And if you could use your strength to set up your striking, that's even better. You know, that's evolving. That's what you should do. So I don't ever look down on a performance. I saw a lot of people on social media, you know, talking trash about him and even talking trash about Dotson, you know, but that's the same Dotson we've been getting since day one, right? I mean, he doesn't fight any different.
Media, we're talking trash.
Yeah, can you believe it?
Is that breaking news? Should I write it?
Go TikTok it. Go TikTok it. Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. I you know, I mean, I saw people giving Dotson, you know, for fighting the way we've been watching him fight since day one. So yeah, people on social media talking trash, and I wasn't one of them.
That's not including us, right?
Right.
We're not in.
I barely even tweeted. I actually sat down and watched the fights and kind of put my phone down, which is amazing.
Yeah, I just tweeted the main event. Really, though I watched it through. Otherwise, Daniel Pineda was other main card fighter. Good performance, returning to the UFC. Nice win there. I think a lesson in perseverance, right? And we see these kind of mixed in once in a while where a guy that you think maybe not quite going to do it or get back or some story that makes it difficult. But he had a good night. Also, you know, Vince Pichel, right, tonight, a guy who sort of comes back and after a long, difficult road to get there. Anything else on this card jump out to you, Jeff?
There were good fights all through. You know, even though we said, you know, basically we talked about the main event and co-main event, but you know, whenever we tend to do that and say, oh, there's only one fight on this card. And a lot of times now, if there is one or two fights, that's the fights that I'll say that I have to watch, and I do watch those and don't necessarily pay attention to the other fights. They usually always turn out to be good. I mean, that's the way the sport is. That's what makes it great.
Yeah. Speaking of great, we now have another pay-per-view to look forward to. September. I think it's September 27th. I think that's the date. Sorry if I don't have that exact. But the middleweight title fight for the UFC, right? Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa. What did you think of the promo? Did you see the promos that they were running for this? I tweeted. I got the juices flowing. That promo really worked for me. I mean, two guys with zeros in the loss column. Right. That's always going to get me and get my ears perked up because, you know, I say it time and again. I want to know who the best in the world is. Really, that's like the main thing that drives my intrigue in mixed martial arts. The athletes are amazing. The fighters are amazing. The bouts themselves are super entertaining. But to know that, like, here's a fight, to understand who the best in the world is at either this particular weight or, you know, we talk about heavyweight in sort of a larger context. This fight measures up, so I'm excited for it. How do you feel about this next one looking forward?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. My original thought was, at this point in time, obviously, you know, they put Donald Cerrone on the card, Johnny Walker, but my thought was, yeah, is Israel Adesanya a big enough name yet to push a pay-per-view? And I'm not so sure.
He's done it. They've done it. He's done it.
But I mean,
he's
done it.
And Jeff, who cares? It's a great fight. You're not making money off the UFC pay-per-view. All you're doing is giving them your money. Who cares if it makes money for anybody? It's a great fight, quite honestly.
It is a great fight. Yeah. It is a great fight.
It'll make money. It'll make money for the UFC. It's a hell of a fight, but competitively, it's outstanding. Costa's a beast. They took all night on the pay-per-view. They were talking about how the guy's enormous. He could be a heavyweight. You know, so I'm excited for this fight, and I think the UFC is always, you know, they deserve credit. They did not fire one single person during this time. They've put on fights. They've made paydays for fighters. They've found ways to do it in the U.S. and internationally, and they've done it a whole host of different ways. And I think they've certainly benefited. The fighters have benefited, and ESPN has benefited, and you know, fans and everybody else who cares about the sport has really been lucky to take the ride. So UFC Absolutely. 252 in the books. Glad to do this live. Please subscribe to the podcast. Pretty easy to do on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know, hit that notification button. You'll find out when we're doing these things live anyways. on Wednesdays. Jeff, final thoughts as we head out of Saturday into a new week.
Another good card. We've been waiting. I'm one person that I've always talked about not really caring for rematches and trilogies. How many trilogies has there actually been? That would be interesting to know and see, not counting the Midwestern guys, the Fight and Monty Cox shows that have probably had like 12 trilogies, but meaningful trilogies. So, and we got to see, we're here in a time that we got to see DC's first fight, and now we probably saw his last fight. And we got to enjoy that ride and enjoy him.
Yeah.
He's done a lot for the sport.
Yeah. That's a nice thought. You're right. I mean, we did see the entire arc of his career. He was one of these guys who came late to mixed martial arts, and he jumped in really kind of the deep end, right? Pretty early on. So if it is the last time we see Daniel Cormier, lots of fond memories. He gave everything that he could give, and I think people should remember him that way. And as we look forward, I think the legends of Stipe Miocic is still needs to be written. It's a legend. I just don't know what it is yet, right?
Right.
I think it's hard to say exactly what that is, but he's going to be someone we have to talk about for a long time in this sport.
Yeah, I agree. He's a great fighter. Another great Daniel Cormier memory was, I forgot, him and Greg Savage bet on something, and
all these DC memories with Savage, by the way.
Right. Yeah. At least never mind. But no, it was a belly slap. And to see Daniel Cormier give Greg Savage a belly slap, that's a good memory.
Did his fist go into Greg's stomach? Like
it was like Stipe's finger, and yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It was like Stipe's finger going in his eye.
Wow. That's a lovely thought to go out on, Jeff. For Jeff Sherwood, I am Josh Gross. You've been watching the MMA Outsider Show. Thank you very much. Take care.